He had always been the kind of person who quit before the finish line, who gave up the moment the road grew steep or the challenges seemed too big to handle. From school projects to sports competitions, from learning new skills to pursuing small personal goals, he had left countless dreams unfinished, each one quietly reinforcing the belief that he was destined to settle for less. His life felt like a pattern, a repeating cycle of hope, effort, and eventual surrender. Every time he quit, he told himself it was realistic, that it was smarter to give up than to risk failure. But deep down, he knew he was betraying himself. Each abandoned dream added weight to his shoulders, a reminder of potential wasted and opportunities lost. He grew up surrounded by voices that warned him about failure, that celebrated caution over ambition. Family members, friends, and teachers often emphasized safety, practicality, and doing what was easy over pursuing what was meaningful. He absorbed these lessons without realizing it, letting fear dictate his choices. By the time he reached adolescence, quitting had become almost automatic. He rarely questioned it. He simply did it, as naturally as breathing. But late at night, when the world was quiet and he was alone with his thoughts, the truth always surfaced. He was tired of quitting. He longed for a sense of accomplishment, a life where effort led to results, a story he could tell with pride instead of regret. One evening, after walking away from another project he had promised himself he would complete, he scrolled aimlessly through social media. That's when he saw a quote that seemed almost alive on the screen. "The day you stop quitting is the day your life truly begins." The words struck him in a way nothing else ever had. He imagined his future self as a real presence, silently observing his actions, taking note of every choice, every moment of surrender. The thought was unsettling. For years, he had assumed the future was distant, abstract, irrelevant to his present struggles. But now he realized that his future self had been watching all along, quietly recording his efforts or lack thereof. The idea that he was accountable to someone who would judge him with clarity and honesty stirred a mix of fear and determination within him. That night, he didn't feel inspired. There was no sudden flood of energy or instant transformation. Change, he realized, would not arrive in an instant. But for the first time, he allowed himself to imagine what life could be like if he stopped quitting. He pictured finishing what he started, pushing through challenges, and finally proving to himself that he was capable of more than he had ever believed. He made a quiet, unspoken promise. Tomorrow, he would take one step further than he had taken yesterday. He would resist the urge to quit just once, and from that single act, he would begin to build momentum. The first step was small, almost insignificant to anyone else, but monumental to him. He returned to a project he had abandoned, opening it again despite his fear and doubt. His hands shook as he worked, and old thoughts tried to pull him back into surrender. But he remembered the image of his future self watching, silently expecting him to rise, to try, and to persevere. That image was enough to keep him going, enough to make the discomfort tolerable, enough to make the first day of a new habit the refusal to quit possible. By the end of that night, he hadn't completed the project. He hadn't achieved mastery or success, but he had done something far more important. He had chosen persistence over surrender. That choice, though small, was the first step toward breaking a lifelong cycle of quitting. For the first time, he realized that his life would change, not because the world was different, but because he had decided to be different. He had begun to understand the power of commitment, the value of effort, and the transformative force of refusing to give up, even when every instinct urged him to stop. In that quiet, determined act, he planted the seed for the unstoppable life that lay ahead. The days that followed were far from easy. Refusing to quit, even for a single project, felt like swimming upstream against a powerful current. Every instinct he had cultivated over years of surrender screamed at him to stop, to take the comfortable route, to abandon the challenge and return to the familiar pattern of giving up. But this time was different. He had glimpsed the future, a version of himself that refused to quit, and that vision became a silent guide, a standard to live up to. Each morning, he reminded himself of that future self, imagining eyes watching every choice, every hesitation, every effort. That mental image became a compass, pointing him toward persistence and away from the ease of surrender. He began breaking down tasks into smaller, manageable steps. Where before he had been overwhelmed by the enormity of a challenge, he now approached it methodically. Each step completed became a quiet victory, reinforcing his growing belief that progress was possible. At first, Even these small victories felt exhausting, but gradually they accumulated, creating a momentum he had never experienced before. He discovered that persistence is not about sudden bursts of effort, but about steady, consistent action. Each completed step was a brick, and each brick laid the foundation for a structure of resilience, discipline, and self-confidence that no challenge could easily topple. Failure still appeared, as it always does. Rejections, mistakes, and setbacks tested his resolve. A failed presentation, a rejected idea, or a poorly executed plan might have been reasons for quitting in the past. Now, however, he interpreted these failures differently. They were feedback, data points to inform his next move. Each obstacle was a lesson disguised as difficulty, and he trained himself to analyze it, adapt, and try again. This shift in mindset transformed struggle from a reason to quit into a reason to grow. The discomfort became a teacher, not an enemy. Gradually, he noticed a shift in his identity. He no longer saw himself as someone who gave up easily. Instead, he began to internalize the idea that he was a person who persisted, who finished what he started, who faced challenges head-on. This change in self-perception reinforced his actions. The more he acted as someone who refused to quit, the more that person became real. It was a feedback loop. Persistence strengthened identity, and identity strengthened persistence. His future self, once a distant concept, had become an active presence, guiding him through every choice, silently approving effort and gently holding him accountable when he faltered. The transformation extended beyond tasks and projects. He started applying the same principle to his habits, relationships, and personal development. He finished books he had abandoned, practiced skills consistently, and pushed through discomfort in learning new things. He confronted difficult conversations instead of avoiding them. Every act of persistence, no matter how small, reinforced the notion that quitting was no longer an option. Slowly, he realized that perseverance was more valuable than talent or luck, that consistency mattered far more than short-lived inspiration, and that true growth is measured by the willingness to continue even when it is hard. People around him began to notice subtle differences. His posture was more confident, his decisions more deliberate, and his presence more assured. He no longer sought validation from others because he was validating himself through persistent effort. He realized that the most powerful accountability comes from within, from the person he was becoming and the future self he was building. Each day, he asked himself, "Am I living up to the standard I set for my future self?" That question kept him moving forward, even on days when fatigue, doubt, or fear tempted him to give up. By the end of this stage, he had transformed from someone who quit at the first sign of difficulty into someone who welcomed challenges as opportunities to grow. His life was still a work in progress, but the habit of persistence had taken root. Every small success reinforced the belief that he could face the next challenge without surrendering. He had discovered the truth that would guide him for the rest of his life. The day you refuse to quit is not just a moment, it is the beginning of a new identity, a new mindset, and a life shaped by determination, courage, and relentless commitment. By the time he reached this stage of his journey, the man who had once quit at every challenge had become unrecognizable to the person he used to be. The habit of surrender, which had defined his life for years, had been replaced by the relentless practice of persistence. He still faced obstacles, failures, and moments of doubt, but they no longer dictated his actions. Where he had once seen insurmountable walls, he now saw puzzles to solve, challenges to overcome, and opportunities to grow. Every difficulty became a chance to prove to himself that he would continue, no matter how hard the path became. His life had begun to reflect the choices he had made in the previous chapters of his journey. Success was no longer a distant dream or an abstract concept. It was the natural result of consistent effort, discipline, and resilience. He had learned that quitting is never inevitable, it is a choice, and choosing to persist creates momentum that compounds over time. Each day he refused to give up. He strengthened his character, built confidence, and laid another brick in the foundation of the life he wanted to lead. The small victories of consistency had transformed into major achievements, not because the world had changed, but because he had changed. The man had also discovered a deeper layer of insight. True victory is not measured by wealth, status, or recognition alone. It is measured by the alignment between the person you are today and the person you aspire to become. Every habit cultivated, every skill mastered, every challenge overcome, was proof that he was living intentionally, shaping a future that once existed only as a vision. His past self, the one who quit easily, seemed like a stranger now, and he was grateful for the lessons it had taught him. Each moment of struggle, every failed attempt, had become a teacher, guiding him toward the mindset that would carry him forward. He now understood that being unstoppable does not mean avoiding failure, it means choosing to continue even when failure is inevitable. Life had not become easier, but he had grown stronger, wiser, and more resilient. He no longer feared setbacks because he knew they were part of the process, part of the training that strengthened his persistence. The future self who had once silently watched him was now a partner in his journey, a reflection of his growth and a source of motivation that no obstacle could diminish. He had internalized the lesson that the only way to truly honor your potential is to act consistently, courageously, and without surrender. Looking back, he realized that the day he stopped quitting had not been a single moment in time, it had been a commitment, a mindset, and a lifestyle. That decision had created momentum that carried him through challenges that would have previously seemed insurmountable. He understood that the journey of personal growth is never linear. It is marked by failures, setbacks, learning, and relentless effort. But the consistent refusal to quit transforms struggle into progress, doubt into clarity, and hesitation into action. He had become someone whose presence alone reflected perseverance and determination, a living testament to the power of persistence. By now, he had built a life that mirrored the values he had chosen to embody: courage, discipline, integrity, and relentless commitment to growth. He had mastered the ability to face challenges without surrender, to continue in the face of fear, and to persist when others would have given up. He realized that quitting had been a habit, but persistence could become one too, and it was far more rewarding, far more empowering, and far more transformative. From uncertainty to clarity, from fear to courage, and from hesitation to relentless action, he had transformed completely. His life was now a reflection of his determination, a story of resilience, and a blueprint for others who struggled to overcome the habit of quitting. He understood the ultimate truth: the day you stop quitting is the day your life truly begins. It is the day you claim your potential, embrace your challenges, and commit to becoming unstoppable. And in living that truth, he had discovered not just success, but freedom, the freedom to pursue his dreams fully, without compromise, and without surrender.